Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We have Randall Daniel back with us. Randall is running for Kentucky House Seat 26.
Yep, yep, 26.
I knew that. It's not really written down there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I didn't write it on the sign either, so
There you
most
go.
people don't know where their house district is. So,
That's a good point. You know, no matter how much I look up, I can't quite see the top of the sign, but that's
oh,
okay.
I mean, I can just,
Elect!
yeah,
Yeah, it's important to know.
yeah, yeah.
So,
No, I got it angled so that the glare's not as bad on the glasses, but
yeah.
it's an inevitability.
So I know one of the things with you is imminent domain.
Yeah,
Like that's one of the first things I learned about you because it's like, hi, I'm Randall Daniel and I hate this distiller and their evil imminent domain plans. I think that's the first thing I heard.
yeah. Well,
But
it's not just my disdain for one distillery. It's the public utility companies that are, using their position as a public utility company and using that as a way to just run through private individuals, seize their property, and take their
right.
homes.
Right. Well, today I picked up a bottle of Willet, which isn't made there because you've kind of managed to turn me against them a little bit. So anyway, that isn't exactly why you decided to run, is it? What motivated you to run? Because I know before you were going to like fiscal courts and stuff like that. You've this is your first government elected office, but you've been involved. You've been doing stuff.
Well, it was kind of a handful of people that I've seen at various fiscal court and city council meetings asking me to run, and then seeing that no primary challenger and no Democrat nor any independent or third party had filed to run against the incumbent. And it's not
Wow.
the first time that that's happened for this particular race. Russell Weber, my opponent, has very rarely had any sort of opposition or challenge.
Right.
That's why he originally moved to Bullitt County. That's just me speculating, but he ran as a Democrat prior, moved to Bullitt, ran as a Republican, and has had little to no opposition since.
Wow. Wow. So, have you thought about some of the things you hope to accomplish while you're in the House?
Well,
Besides just giving people a choice. I mean, it's awesome that you give people a choice because I hate it when there's like only in your case it's only one candidate, but I even hate it when there's only two candidates and I can't stand either one of them. And that's what motivated me to run. But beyond that, you're much better than this other person because
well, because I don't want to make money off of politics. I don't want to take donations from various corporate interests or entities that are going to pay me in order to push legislation to allow eminent domain, to supply prisons, that sort of thing. I also want to try to make sure that there's a lot of transparency, that every vote is a voice or is a roll call vote. I want every time that you pass any bill or law that your name has to be signed on it. And I want everybody accountable for it. If you as a legislator legislate in a manner that damages somebody's property, you should be liable for that.
yeah,
Criminally liable. If you take someone's property, if you detriment their livelihood, if you cost them a life, God forbid, you
right.
should be liable as a legislator for those things.
Well, you said criminally liable, but wouldn't that be a civil suit? I mean,
Oh, well, I mean, I would like to see legislators jailed for damaging
jailed
people.
for it.
Like, yes. If somebody made a law today that made it
Hmm.
legal to harm another person, the person who drafted that legislation and all those that voted in favor of it should be held criminally liable for it. You can't
Now,
just declare somebody a public enemy of Rome.
right. Now let's think this through though. Think of all the legislators we would have to throw in prison over the war on drugs. That would be, but we could empty out all the victimless offenders. So I guess we would have room. That would work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah, it would at least make them pause for a second and think about the ramifications of the bills that they introduce if
Right,
they had some form of liability. It's the
right.
same arguments that have been brought up in regards to, police officers. I know that's a very hot issue right now, but, you shouldn't have immunity for your actions.
Right, and that's
Corporations, individuals, governments are all liable.
yeah, that's number one item in Larry Sharp's quick program. I made these cards, but stop qualified immunity from shielding police officers in our court. But I shouldn't have really said police officers. I should have just said officers of the state. And one of my big pet peeves is district attorneys. A dishonest district attorney can do so much harm. And as is, they have prosecutorial immunity. And I understand. People make mistakes. I understand people in government aren't going to be perfect, but a prosecutor who knowingly hides evidence so that they can win a case. I mean, you're talking about somebody's life.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think they should be accountable. And absolutely, when that person gets out of prison in 10 to 15, I think they should be able to sue the bejesus out of the DA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that DA probably wouldn't have the money to have campaigned and wound up being our VP candidate for the Democratic Party.
Ooh, shots fired.
Well, let's get to eminent domain.
Yeah.
Tell us about tell us what you've already done in the arena of eminent domain.
Well, there's not a whole lot that one individual can generally do in
Right.
such a. But what really sparked my interest in it was that my dad stood up against an eminent domain. He had a 100-acre farm that's been in my family for quite a few generations. On my mother's side, though, my dad purchased it from my grandpa on my mom's side after marrying my mother. But that ground had been in our family for quite a while, and so it was meaningful to us. But it was also damn good farmland that we had built up over that time period.
Right.
And it had a water right of way. It followed Salt River here in Bullitt County,
Very nice.
the length of the track. And that river would periodically wash up sediment and help naturally fertilize those fields. But it also caused partial flooding throughout the year. So irrigation was a pretty big part of maintaining that property. Well, Louisville Water, they wanted to come in. They had noticed that the water pressure in an adjoined subdivision area was too low to the fire code. But it was, there's water, there's a river, there's an area full of lakes. The subdivision is called, Kings Lakes, because there's a bunch of interweaving lakes. And
what are we gonna do for water?
Yeah, to eminent domain, a tract of that land that ran in parallel with the river, which would have caused my dad to have to clear cut the bank, which would cause the erosion, which would have also have had to have been maintained for the water company. But they weren't willing to pay him but a couple grand for a right of way on that huge and prevent any sort of irrigation. And so he spent a hefty sum, tens of thousands of dollars, fighting it in court. The court came back and said that the initial offer of the water company should have been closer to $25,000. That they were not negotiating in good faith because after my dad declined their offer, they took him to court immediately. And at the end of the day, my dad got paid nothing. They haven't taken the land, thank God, but they might come back in a few years, and now they have this value that the court has set on that ground. And the only reason why they didn't take it for that amount was because the water company didn't justify it. If they can say that any given amount isn't justifiable, and we're not talking like tens of thousands, we're talking like 25 grand, right?
Right.
Then it really wasn't that big of an issue that the water pressure was slightly low in that subdivision.
Right.
Also, it's low. It's not non-existent. They could have expanded the current existing pathways, but that would have been too costly.
So how is
So
this land going to fix the water pressure? I'm not actually following that.
they were going to run a secondary line.
Okay.
Yeah, they were going to run an entire second line to, jump across the river and then run to this area, as opposed to, digging up Highway 44 and running a line alongside or underneath of it, because it would have
Okay.
been pretty congested to traffic. But there's a reroute. They could have taken Raymond Road, and traffic would have adjusted. Like, it's not a super populous area. Um, but that was my first exposure in my adult life where I was really aware of it, where eminent domain started happening, and pretty much nobody stood up to help my dad. He managed
Right.
to fight it off because he was lucky enough to have fair bit of money to fight him with. But
And
uh,
not everyone does.
correct. And so when I started hearing about other eminent domain going on in my county, with other public utility companies, and an even more egregious case of it because this gas pipeline that they're trying to run in Bullitt, it's not even for residential; it's commercial use only. It's a high pressure gas line. No residents can hook onto it, and yet they're still trying to claim it as a public service. You can't claim a corporate subsidy as a public service, and it is morally bankrupt to attempt to do so, and even more morally bankrupt to steal people's land and endanger their lives to do so.
Now, it isn't just that, if I'm remembering correctly, it isn't just that it's not a service, a direct service to the public, but in relation to, yeah, maybe they can offer some jobs or something like that, but they could already run the pipeline a different way, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's existing infrastructure. Run it in parallel with the roads. Use existing right of ways. Don't.
So this
I was just
this
going to
this
say,
is money,
yeah, it's just the cost. They
right?
are determining that your livelihood, that your well-being, that what you own is worth less to them because they can take it
Right.
than what the alternative pathway would be. And it's not up for the government or for some company to determine what your land is worth. That's for a free market or an individual to determine. It's worth
Right.
whatever you think it's worth to you. If you're willing to sell it for that price, it's worth that price. If you're not willing to, it's worth more than that price.
So is there any case where eminent domain is justifiable?
I don't think so because eminent domain is ultimately when they take it via force, right? Like there's always cases in which public works are justifiable, right? You
Sure.
can come in and offer a fair market value and build any road, pipeway, and if you can't afford it, if the price is too high, you can work around. We can come up with an infinite, ever more complex scenario in which we need to get a pipeline from A to B, and the number of mountains that we're going to have to come up with in this fictitious scenario, the number of barriers and burdens on alternative pathways is
Right.
infinitely more complex than what reality ever is.
Right.
Um, at the end of the day, there are existing pipeway or pathways that can be taken, and
Mm-hmm.
you can just, you know, take a 90 instead of doing a straight line through somebody's farm,
Right.
underneath the house, or through caves, or through wildlife preserves and such.
Well, I remember when my parents were selling their house in Boyle County when I was
Mhm.
in high school. There'd been a pipeline explosion in Garrett County just a few years earlier. And we didn't have a pipeline running through our land, or at least not the land the house was on.
Mhm.
But there was one that ran, across the road.
Yeah.
But people were still nervous about it, and that's the thing. You run a pipeline. I mean, it never affected me in my entire life until there was the explosion, and then my parents were trying to sell the house a couple of years later, and everybody was like, pipeline.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, there's an
yeah,
explosion recently in Oldham County. Um, Massive fire, killed several people. Same
right,
company is wanting to run this one, and it's in a similar circumstance. They're trying to, do an extension on a pipeline that predates the inspectionary agency that determines whether or not they're safe. And from my understanding, That pipeline's never passed inspection since it was installed.
Lovely, lovely. So you just mentioned an agency in terms of inspecting. Are you in favor of having such agencies? Because people normally think libertarians want absolutely no government at all.
You can
So
do a private agency to inspect stuff. Like who inspected your toilet? You
but with
know,
the but with the pipeline, so it would be to cover liability, perhaps. What would motivate them to get it inspected?
insurance, liability.
Insurance,
I mean, everybody should be open to any sort of liability that they present out there.
right?
If a pipeline is ran by a company, that company should be ultimately responsible. Like, take, for example, the BP oil spill. The biggest
Exactly where I was going. Go for it.
issue I have with the BP oil spill is the fact that these government agencies cap their liability. Had the government
Hmm.
had the government left their liability uncapped, BP would have had to have been liquidated to pay for the damages, and a more responsible owner who would have been much more conscientious in the future would have been piloting that company, or at least
Right,
piloting that infrastructure.
right.
Infrastructure doesn't cease to exist just because a company goes bankrupt. What happens
Exactly.
is that new leadership and ownership steps in, which, we could get into the whole Detroit Motor thing, right? Had those companies failed, Elon Musk might have been making a lot more Teslas today.
Maybe he would have had better access to talent. For example, probably better access to people who know how to run paint shops. That has been one of his weak points.
Yeah,
Some people who are more experienced in certain forms of manufacturing. I absolutely love my Model 3, but it's
I
a
love your
company that's
Model 3
growing and
too.
moving.
It was a
So
pleasure to ride in down to Florida and back.
it's a good road trip, man. We gotta
Yeah.
we gotta do it again. And what is it, 2022 that we're going to
Reno?
Reno? Yeah, that's gonna be a good trip. I
Yeah.
hope some of the rest of you join us. But there was and I know you have a great memory. You might remember this guy. There was a Republican legislator who came out speaking against getting rid of the caps, which at the time were, I think, 75 million. 75 million as a cap for damages in the Gulf. I mean, think about it. That's crazy. In modern times,
Yeah.
BP can do $75 million worth of damage in a flipping heartbeat. He can do that to one. They can do that to one company. But
Yeah.
anyway, this legislator was basically claiming that if without the caps, drilling in the Gulf wouldn't be affordable.
Okay, then don't do it.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the market's going to determine whether or not you can afford to do something. If you can't
Right.
afford to go take a vacation, if you can't afford to go start a hair salon or do something or another, that's a signal from the economy that you probably should be doing something else at the moment. That
Right.
doesn't mean you can't do it later, right? So it
Sure.
may not be at this moment profitable to tap this oil well or the other oil well, but if you buy foreign oil, you use up their oil, then your oil will become more valuable as it's still there. And then the cost prohibitive nature of that type of drilling will become a better return on investment.
Right. So we would end up drilling that oil when it was worth a lot more, and it made it more affordable to go to more extreme safety measures to protect our coasts.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Another time, so insurance, the little quick card talks about require police officers to carry liability insurance instead of sticking taxpayers with the bill for bad behavior. And that's the same concept is bad cops would end up pricing themselves out of a market. Being a bully of a cop just wouldn't be affordable. On the other hand, if you're a well-behaved cop that doesn't get in trouble, you're going to end up saving money on insurance, just like a safe driver.
Well,
You
getting
can
back
pocket a
to
little money.
the corporate element of it, a bully of a company, somebody who
Yep.
goes out and has destructive practices like dumping their distillers products, the just the crud that they don't need afterward, and turning Long Lick Creek in Bullitt County just a nice oil sheen across it. A company that would do that, or the same company that would do eminent domain, they would be liable for that sort of thing, and we wouldn't have such a bully of a company in our economy.
Right. Right. And I mean that's the thing. It's not that they wouldn't exist. It's that they would behave differently,
Yeah, or
or,
they wouldn't exist. One of the
or they
two.
wouldn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Um, yeah. That's great. So one of the issues with the pipeline, I know you were really engaged with was Save Bernheim.
Yeah, so Burnham Forest is directly adjacent and across the street and partially surrounding Jim Beam Distillery. And
Now you've gave away who you've been talking about all this time.
yeah, but the really saddening thing about it is it's actually one of the major donors to Burnham.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you go to Burnham's website, you can look at it, and Jim Beam's one of the major donors to upholding. But the thing about Bernheim, though, is they don't necessarily need anybody else's money. They were formed in trust. There was a sizable estate that was given to Bernheim, which became, that's what Bernheim was started as.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an example of how private property rights can preserve the environment far better than, a national forest or any corporate interest. Sure, they're taking money from some various, corporations and such, and I don't know their exact nature of their relationship financially with government subsidies and such, but we could easily get that information. I got a few relatives who work at Bernheim. One of them works as an accountant.
There you
Um,
go.
but yeah, no, Jim Beam actually donates quite a bit of money to Bernheim, from my understanding, and it just breaks my heart that on one hand, they do that so they look good, but on the back door, they're running a pipeline through Bernheim without Bernheim's consent and using eminent domain as a bloody cudgel to beat them with in order to force it through. And
Right.
I mean, they can make an argument, well, it's not that invasive of a pipeline. It's only like yay or yay big and amongst the whole forest. But you have to clear cut a pathway to plant, to lay that pipeline. You have to maintain a right of way. That's a lot of trees and a lot of birds and bees disturbed, just so that Jim Beam doesn't have to either, run off of existing pathways, or let's say that they weren't allowed any pipeline, truck it in.
My instinct is the pipeline's probably safer than trucking, but I don't actually know.
Maybe, but propane gets trucked all over the county and all over the nation as is,
Right.
and it makes a lot of jobs for a lot of people. If that is proven to
Sure.
be the most economic way of doing something, awesome, great. And if
I was thinking the other direction. I was thinking of the boring company.
yeah,
I mean, you don't have to dig these pipelines anymore. But I don't know how expensive it is to bore versus dig, and the boring company is based around, well, all the boring companies, that technology is based on tunnels big enough for the equipment and the manpower and everything to go through it.
yeah, I would suspect that Bullitt County is probably not going to pay to have a giant bored pipeline, especially when there's so many caves and such. And that's actually part of the reason why they've determined to take the pathway they have, is they want to use some of the existing cave structures as natural storage facilities,
Ah,
because they just want to pump the holes in the dirt with gas.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, just
That
don't
that
get a match.
yeah, that plan makes me nervous.
Well,
That sounds like not a
don't
good
or something.
plan.
They'll make sure they don't leak. Don't worry. Their liability will cover it if they have any major explosion
Yeah.
in Bloom or whichever county is next. They'll just don't worry about your house, your family, the forest, the farm, the kids. your neighbor, your cat. If that blows up, they'll cover it.
Well, here's the clue, boys and girls. How'd the cave get there? The stone was permeable. So, yeah, that's not a good plan.
Yeah.
So, one last topic, and in a weird way, it does sort of connect back to them giving money, because even if they're doing it to look good, I mean, a lot of us go through life doing things not completely without motive, but to feel good about ourselves, or so that other people will think we're awesome, or something like that. And that's kind of an example of volunteerism. Once you take it to the personal level.
Yeah, I mean, we can go Ayn Rand here and say that, everybody's self-interested, and that, it's just, Jim Beam's self-interest that, drives them to be a charity and such towards Bernheim. But, I think that that's just more of a PR deal. The big issue that I have with all of it, right, does tie into volunteerism, right? This is a non-voluntary, non-consensual relationship.
Right. But I wanted to talk about the flip side of it. Is you like volunteerism when it's actually
charity that is
voluntary.
Charity.
Yeah.
I got in trouble in high school because I was in this program called JROTC, and we were required to do so much charity per semester. And while I'm happy and eager to do charity or to do public works, once you put a dollar threshold of $50 a semester or equivalent in canned goods and dictate,
that's a tax.
Yeah, no, you're charging me $50. So what I ended up doing is I just paid it every semester and then didn't report whatever charity or whatever I did. I would assist, but I wouldn't report. Like we'd do canvassing for canned goods as ROTC students, right? We'd go knock doors. My senior year, I'd drive a bunch of freshmen around, and they'd knock the doors, and I'd drive, and I'd be putting my gas, energy, time, planning it, and all of that. But at the end of it, I wouldn't take a cut of whatever they, I wouldn't put that on my little clipboard for what I collected. I'd just pull a couple 20s out of my pocket, donate that, and do that as my little protest.
Right.
And I got told that defeated the spirit of the project. Just write to pull it out of your pocket, but I think that
the project defeats the spirit of the project.
I offered, well, can we clean up a playground? Can we clean up a park? And I was met with the pushback that that's too much paperwork, because the program as a whole was required to do so much charity in order to keep its honor unit with distinction. And no, it's too much charity. We'll just do Relay for Life. So, okay, too much paperwork, whatever. I mean, don't put a grade on it. Don't put a benchmark. Just if you want to do something to help people, or do it to help them.
Right.
And
those are my favorite. My favorite are the moments when you see the person and you feel like you can make a difference and nobody's looking, and you just do it.
Yeah. I've got a few stories.
I'm not going to give examples because that kind of that would ruin it for me. But
I mean, every time I tell somebody about sometime I've helped somebody, I feel like it dirties it a little bit,
yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, maybe I'll inspire somebody else to do it. I've had several friends or people who I've known from high school or coworkers that have fallen on hard times, and I've let them stay at my house rent free for months and months. I've had about a half a dozen or more technically homeless, but usually employed people just live with me for upwards of a year sometimes.
Wow.
I drove down past the Bullitt County Detention Center one time. I was on the way back from my parents' house towards my own home. And I saw a guy walking, and he wasn't wearing a shirt, and it's a hot summer day. And now this isn't until literally I gave him the shirt off my backstory.
That's what I was thinking. Is like, oh, okay.
But I pulled over after noticing he didn't have any shoes. and I was just wearing some cheap shoes, so it didn't really cost me much. But I mean, I don't know if that's an insurance thing. I've always heard that you're not allowed to drive barefoot, but
I think it's fine.
yeah, I mean, I took my shoes off and gave them to the guy walking. I mean, I felt awful that this guy had been, he had told me that like his house had burnt down and that he was walking down to where he had family or something. And I don't know if I bought that or not, although he did have like, some holes or cinch marks on his shorts that he was wearing. But like, that is such an extreme case. Like, that is an unbelievable story. I mean,
Right.
the alternative is, since he was right by the detention center, was arrested with just a pair of shorts and was therefore released with just a pair of shorts. But that makes me feel awful that somebody in that situation would even be released without shoes. So I have no idea what was going on with that guy, but I knew he didn't have shoes. I had shoes that I could spare. It didn't cost me much.
Well, I'll do a cheap one because it really pales compared to that. First of all, but I was hiring somebody to help me with some farm work,
Hmm.
and I knew he didn't have a lot of money, and I knew he had some kids, and there was a little before Christmas, and I kind of had the impression he was trying to earn a little extra money for the Christmas. So I just asked him, it's like, hey, if I wanted to give you a little money just to help with the kids' Christmas, that'd be cool. He's like, yeah. So I handed him $100, and
Yeah,
there you go.
$100 goes a long way for Christmas kids. You know.
For young kids, it does.
Oh, yeah.
Us But anyway, yeah, I'm not happy I told that, but that's okay. But just stuff like that, just those.
Yeah.
Go through life doing those. Look for the opportunities, and my advice is don't get on webcast and tell people about them because it cheapens. So I won't do that
Like
again.
I said, at the end of the day, it's something you did. You don't have to justify why you did it to anybody, but if it inspires somebody else to do something, good. I mean,
Yeah,
I I don't think you can pervert a deed done in earnest.
right.
I mean, if you did it in goodwill, that's for you to determine if it was in goodwill or not. Just
Sure, exactly. Um, but I think it's good to do stuff like that through life. I mean, I me personally, I do like the question of is this okay?
yeah,
Because not everybody likes accepting.
yeah. Like if somebody's
Uh,
walking barefoot, is it okay if I give you some shoes? You know?
right, right. It
Yeah.
might not be.
Yeah, my brother, he periodically he carries around little like basic Amazon backpacks or whatnot, and he loads them up with various provisions and stuff. So if you see somebody walk in without whatever, he'll
Hmm.
toss them a backpack, and every single backpack has a Bible and a beer in it.
One of them's surely useful.
Yeah, one of the two. But
That's a gorgeous idea. All right. Well, I know you've got a meeting to prep for,
I
and
think I was wrong on the date for the state XCOM thing. We used to do them every other Thursday, but turns out I keep forgetting it's the second, not the fourth,
oh,
because they cut the schedule in half. So I'm pleasantly a little more free tonight than I had anticipated. So Reagan and I have made exciting plans to clean the fridge.
woo!
I've, uh,
Well,
I've got one too many fermentation science experiments in the fridge right now. I tried making kimchi and it's got to go.
yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you get to cleaning that out. That way, maybe things can air out a little bit too.
You know, I want to do a lot more growing my own produce and stuff in the years to come. And while I grew up doing a lot of it, my parents mostly just canned. And, fermentation of various fruits and veggies is something that's, it's picking up popularity and it's, a fun little, low cost hobby to pick up, how, making pickles, that's
Yeah.
the
Real,
taste
real
better.
quick, real quick before we go. Where is House District 26?
House District 26 is a bullet-hardened split district. The easiest way to describe it is the greater Fort Knox area.
Mm.
However, Fort Knox does extend past it on the northwestern route going into Meade County, but this district doesn't go past Dixie Highway, but it follows Dixie Highway down towards northern E-Town and then cuts across with the Rolling Fork River, which is the bullet hardened line, and north of Joe Prather until you get up to Nelson County. And so that's the section of Hardin that it covers. And then it is gerrymandered to all hell in Bullitt County. It gets as thin as like this little gap between two roads, like teeny tiny areas.
We could tell you, but then we wouldn't get the kimchi cleared out.
Yeah.
So,
you could go to findmylegislator.gov, and anytime you want to know who your legislator is, you can look up on there who yours is, who your mom's, your neighbors, your cousins, whomever, and you can even just get on there for fun, see how gerrymandered some of these districts are, how they've strategically put all of the Republicans and Democrats in their own little boxes and bubbles and divided them up like chopped liver. So that they can rig elections through drawing arbitrary lines on maps that can follow drainage ditches.
and then how do people find your campaign? How do they find out about you besides what we just covered?
Well, I do not have a website. That's
Boo.
my negligence. Kyle O'Donnell has offered for me several times to do a website.
Okay.
I have neglected to do so because every time I go to write a BIOS of myself, it sounds like a refrigerator repair manual. I don't know if you guys picked it up on this call or not, but I'm a little dry when I speak, and it's about 10 times worse when I write. That's just part of being a very data analytical type, I guess. Maybe that's my crutch that I can lean on.
Right.
But if you want to reach me, my personal cell phone number is 502-601-1973. My platform is the Libertarian Party platform, as cliched that is. With exception, I am 100% pro-life. I don't have much of any other grievance with any other sentence or statement on the platform. The Kentucky platform on abortion is much better than the national platform's plank on abortion. And I urge everybody to read both and to submit their own. If you want to ever email me at randall.daniel@outlook.com. Those are two good ways to reach me. Or if you just want to pop by, I'm not going to give my address, but you can find that on Secretary of State filings.
I'm not going to find the whole thing, but I am going to at least reference lpky.org. I'm going to put that in the comments. So if you want to go there, you can get to our party platform from there. And also on that site, they have a list of candidates. I also kind of maintain my own list of Kentucky candidates just because I got out of the gate before them on creating one. But you can go to my site, perry4ky.com/candidates, and you can see a list of the candidates we're running in Kentucky, including Randall and including myself. And we have quite a lot of excellent candidates, and in some places we have people who are going to be able to vote for libertarians 4 times on a single ballot, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm not that lucky. I only get 3.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the city councils are not partisan, but were they, we would even have 5 layers deep libertarians in part of the state, which is, that just gives me the fizz.
Right. So if you can vote for Randall, do vote for Randall. If you vote for me, I'm not going to complain. I have a website, and look, it has a little place you can go donate if you want to help me out. That would be awesome. I have yard signs and mailers and stuff like that. Plus, sometimes I just, put a little ad power behind these videos to get them out there so that people can learn who Randall Daniel is. Thanks for joining, everyone. I hope you have a great. I think Chloe's asking this on purpose.
So I am on minds.com. I also have a Twitter. I have been lifetime banned from Facebook. So those of you watching this on Facebook, don't tell Mark Zuckerberg. I've been flagged as a political undesirable or something, as has about a third of our registered, dues paid, and active libertarians, it seems, in Kentucky. And
Right.
it's for a variety of reasons. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm not there very frequently, but I will get a message direct to my phone if you message me on there. It's just nobody's ever messaged me on Twitter, ever. So who wants to be the first?
Chloe's keeping it quiet for us. Thanks, Chloe. One more thing I'm going to mention is I'm going to be in Owensboro on Saturday, and I'll throw the link in the comments later. I don't want to keep you while I find that. But we're going to be sign waving. We've got signs for Joe. We've got signs for me. We've got like lighter waving signs. I like using, oh, here's one. I like using the bigger yard signs. You can buy yard signs. You can buy t-shirts. We have door hangers for Joe. We have door hangers for me. So if you're around Owensboro, you know, come out and meet me, and I'll put the link in the comment so you can come do that. Randall's getting tired. It's his bedtime. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a good evening.